Hi, it's really great to be with you. I am here with my great friend Ellie today, and we're going to be talking about chapter 3, Truthless, from my book, Less is More. Ellie, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Lou. Nice to see you.
A little introduction first, if I may, just to say that I have known you for a long, long time. But we have the real pleasure now being at the same church, which we absolutely love, so we get to hang out more and more. Ellie is fiercely organised, for those of you who don't know her. She's a loyal and great friend. She's a mother to 3, she's wife to 1, and she is a lover of home improvements, let it be known.
Oh, thanks, Lou. Yes, I kind of was really blessed to grow up in a Christian household, actually. So I kind of don't really ever remember a time where I didn't believe in God or know that he was real. I mean, I probably was about 10, I think, when I actually did that for myself and accepted into my heart, but don't remember a time where that wasn't part of who I am. But equally, alongside that, had quite a tricky childhood. So my father, he died when I was 2.5, so I have no memories of him really. And I actually found out when I was about 7 that he'd actually committed suicide. So that was quite a big thing to learn at that age and to know what that meant. And then after that, kind of, my mum got married again, but it just didn't work out as a family. It was quite a painful time in many, many ways. So probably I'd say like up to about 19, life was kind of crazy. Like every year had one massive major thing that was bad kind of thing. And then it slowed down a lot. Early 20s, kind of dealing with a lot of that and healing. And now actually, yeah, so like you said, married to Waldo, got 3 lovely kids, and just think, wow, God's grace.
So good, God's so good. And our stories are so similar, aren't they, in terms of just being without a true father figure. And it's a really, really hard thing to grow up with, isn't it? And have that journey with God as we try and assimilate how God loves us completely. But that's, I think, what I really drew out in this chapter is about this sense of how our circumstances and our story and what's happened in our lives does unwittingly create space for lies just to kind of heap on and pile onto us. And I found, for me personally, particularly as I was growing up, but also again in my 20s, 30s, now 40s, that I have found that the greatest scheme of the enemy actually for us as Christians is for us to believe that we're not enough.
Definitely.
And so whatever situation we find ourselves in, whatever our childhood experience was, whatever our marriage experience was, whatever our friendship experience was or is, that actually those lies that come in really start to dictate, but the enemy wants to keep us there so we don't live in the fullness of what God has got for us.
Yeah, totally.
And so I just think, I know it's not church culture as a whole, I know we're speaking like from our own personal experiences, but sometimes I think like we water down the gospel and it becomes this literally 3 words of I am rubbish, rather than I am saved. You know, we stop at the I am rubbish bit, but we don't go to the other side of the story, the other half of the story, to say, but I'm saved. You know, I may be fatherless, I may live penniless, I may be whatever, but actually there's a full and complete story the other side. And I wonder for you, Ellie, just with anything that from pain, from trauma, but particularly in this whole area of living truthless, where have you really noticed that you've only lived in that half of that gospel story?
Yes, I realised a massive, big fat lie of my life has been that because my dad killed himself, I think I've always just thought I'm not enough. You know, if I was enough, my dad would have wanted to. He would have stuck through the pain of depression. He would have made that through. I just felt that I wasn't enough, that wasn't good enough, that in some way that was my fault, which is ridiculous because you're 2.5 years old, but it's, and then when you have your own kids, you see kind of what a ridiculous thing that is, that it's not the child's fault in any way, but it's a massive lie. And I think it's, really been a really hard journey on that one, and not there yet on that. But in terms of like growing up, it kind of makes you then be a people pleaser because you just don't want to upset anyone really. And I found in your book, I'll just read out a little section where so often we blame our pain for our broken sense of self. That's only the half of it. Often believing the lie is what started it all. Where do we need to acknowledge that we've been chatting with the enemy for too long? Pain isn't our enemy. Our conversation with the devil is. Dialoguing with the devil is dangerous. And it's just been a really big eye-opener to me, that thing of going, that's only half the battle, you know. And the other half is fighting against those lies. And again, especially as a mum now, it's funny when you see your kids grow up and you just think, yeah, I'd hate for them to grow up believing lies over their life, actually, and it makes you want to fight it more, doesn't it, and stop that cycle. Because I can see that. The reality is my dad, he killed himself because he didn't believe he was good enough, you know, and then that lie gets repeated, and that's exactly what the devil wants to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want that over my children in any way. So yeah.
No, that's so good. That's real gold, isn't it? And I think it's about breaking cycles. And what I noticed and talk about in the book is this cycle of the labels that we put, you know, the lies we hear, and then the labels that we end up attaching to ourselves, and then this sense of entitlement that we can't kind of push through and get to the other side and get to the good news story. You know, for me, there's a history of alcoholism in our family, so I have had to really fight that. I enjoy a glass of wine. I am not an alcoholic. Do you know what I mean? There's a difference. We have to somehow root out the real truth of who we are before God. But more than that, Ellie, that what he's able to do anyway, in spite of that. So yes, there's a history of depression. Yes, there's a history of alcoholism, but that's not who God says I am. And that is the freedom you and I are called to walk in. And I think you said something really good there, that, you know, it's not just me. And I think you realise, don't you, as we get older and as we dialogue more like this, and we are more accountable and we're more willing to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable, that you think, gosh, it's not just me. You know, reality is, it's a constant journey of moving towards God, becoming more like him, becoming more whole. And actually those small victories for you and your kids, that they don't live under that same depression rhetoric, like that does not need to happen. You guys pray for your children. Plenty of people pray for your kids. And so it's knowing that the power of prayer is what breaks the power of those things. And so, what you've just shared there is great. So thank you so much. I just also wanted to ask you a little bit about what you think generally sort of societal kind of lies are. I mean, you touched a little bit on COVID, but I just wondered, what have you heard like around your, you know, at the school gates, or just other things that you think people live under, and where you think they come from? Have you got any observations about that?
I think it's just a general insecurity, isn't there? About I think most people, well, I don't know, a lot of people I know live under that thing of feeling that they're actually not enough, you know, maybe especially down in the school, not enough, good enough mum in some ways. They struggle and they find it hard, which we all do, you know. And I think it's, the bar is just set very high, isn't it? And actually even among Christian circles, I think that can be like that. So we kind of, I think we have this little society, this little thing sometimes where we judge how good a preacher is and we judge how good a worship was led. And I just think, I'm pretty sure that's not from God, actually, in terms of, it's okay because we're humans and we like different things, but in terms of, we just kind of need a little bit more grace, I think, because otherwise we're all living under this thing of comparison, aren't we, whatever we do. And actually one of the things I've been thinking about is how it's a funny thing, isn't it, in church circles. I think I've almost kind of gone, it's okay to tell myself I'm not good enough. It's okay to be that, because that makes me humble, you know, and that's such a false humility, isn't it? Because that's not what God says, you know. God says we're precious in his sight, you know. God says that we're pretty awesome, do you know what I mean? He loves us. So it's kind of like such a lie, isn't it, that comes in a funny little way that you just think, well, if I keep saying that, it's okay, because it's just, I don't want to think more of myself than I should do. But I think that can stop us actually allowing the truth of who we are and to be confident in who we are.
And you know what? I think false humility is an Achilles heel in the church.
Yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely. We were talking about this very thing the other day, weren't we? And I just think, my goodness me, if people are broken, like we're just so fearful of acknowledging our brokenness that then we retreat back to the I'm not good enough, woe is me rhetoric. And then we have this false humility, which actually is so crippling, and probably even worse living under that than it is under the lies that you're believing about yourself in the first place.
Totally. And I feel like, you know, sometimes somebody gives me a compliment and in my head I just go, no, that's not true, you know. And it's just like, wow, that's silly, isn't it? Because why would someone say that if they didn't believe it? And I think we just need to be speaking to ourselves strongly about this. And and I want to be that person on the playground that's being encouraging, that's like challenging to say, no, you know, you're doing a great job, you know, that kind of thing. So, and in churches as well, let's encourage each other. It takes a lot of guts to get up there and do something at the front of church, doesn't it? So whatever you're doing, serving on a team, giving coffee, but let's just encourage each other, you know.
Absolutely. No, you're bang on. I think that's brilliant. In the book I talk about this idea, you know, from Colossians 3, where it says about putting on a new self.
Yeah.
and this sort of new wardrobe. And I've used that analogy before when I've spoken about this subject, and just how we need to almost physically put on new clothes, as you will, so rather than that coat of condemnation or the trousers of terror or whatever, all those weird things that we live under. Actually, we need to physically go to our spiritual wardrobe and dig out the stuff that says loved across it, or grateful, or I am enough, whatever that thing is that we need to live under. And I mean, that's maybe a silly analogy for some, particularly not into clothes and wardrobes, I don't know, but I think in reality, what are the tools that you found to be really useful, Ellie, when you've been really conscious that you're not living in that space of grace, that space of truth? What have you had to do practically, spiritually, or a combination of both, to really engage better with who God says that you are?
Yeah, well, for me, firstly, going back to my story about my dad, I actually find it quite helpful to picture myself as a child, like that 2.5-year-old girl. And actually, my earliest memory is actually coming down the stairs and asking where my dad was, kind of thing. And don't remember much after that, but I kind of like to picture myself as that little girl in that green dress, and kind of just, God, do you imagine God turning around saying, you're not good enough? I mean, it's just such a big, fat lie, isn't it? It's like, so I just like to picture myself at that and think, no, God's heart is for me. He loves me. I'm thinking about myself as a child and receiving that in some ways. I also actually think a lot of it is actually saying sorry to God, like about the lies that we've taken on. And again, just from your book here, it says, for me to live in a place of shame, it insults what God has done in my life. And I've been thinking about that a while, because it is, isn't it? It's like, God's like, he sent his son to die on the cross for us, to take away all our shame. And then we just keep taking it back every day, So I think for me, repentance is another way for that. And then finally, I really love, there's a song, isn't there, by Hillsong called Who You Say I Am, a Child of God. And I just love the words in that. Who the sun sets free, I was free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. And I just think, just repeat that song over yourself, Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So good. I was hoping you might sing it to us, Ellie, but not today.
Yeah, another day.
Yeah, another day when it's not so warm. But yeah, you're right. I mean, worship, like you've just said there, is so key, isn't it? But that actually then makes us really vulnerable, because then we are exposed to a place of then, okay, God, I'm sorry, I've lived under that cloud of whatever. And what you've just mentioned there from the book, some might hear that and go, oh God, that really is a challenge. And that's maybe not the most pastoral statement, but I think there is truth in it, in the sense that actually, yeah, we need to really face up to how we're living, and actually choose, like almost make a choice that we're going to step away and out of that.
Yeah.
And I think so much of it often is down to us. I'm notwithstanding the fact that prayer is awesome, don't get me wrong, but I think we have to choose to do certain things, much like unwittingly we've chosen to live under that spirit of whatever it is that's affecting us and infiltrating our minds and our souls. Is there anything else you'd want to say, just to encourage anybody that's listening today in this whole area?
I would just say, keep going. It's tough. Like, I'm a 41-year-old woman, and I feel like sometimes the journey's only just starting in this side, like the lies. And I think, again, probably for me, because like I mentioned, I think when it was just myself, like, it didn't really matter so much. I wasn't going to affect many other people. But now when you have children, you just kind of think, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to teach them what it is to think about yourself in a right way, in the way that God sees you. So I just encourage people to keep going, really. And just one other verse I've always found really, really helpful is James 4 verse 7, where it says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. And I think it is that whole battlefield of the mind, isn't it? These thoughts come and you say, no, that's from the devil, that's not from God. So all I need to say is, Jesus, come be with me. He's so much more powerful. He's got the victory. But just to say, I think also it's never too late. Like I said, I feel like I'm only just beginning some of this journey, and I feel like I've been on a healing journey most of my life, but I feel like it's never too late, is it? So just keep going.
Oh, yeah, that's so good, Ellie. Thank you so much. And I wonder, just as a parting shot, would you finish the sentence, less is more?
I think that less is more, because God's power is made perfect in weakness.
Amen. That is so, so good. Ellie, I've got goose pimples. I've just absolutely loved our conversation. Thank you so, so much.